The morning was quiet and peaceful. Birds sang in the trees. Children walked to school. People drank their coffee and read the news. It was a normal Tuesday on Earth. Then the sky turned dark. Kang Taiho was sitting in his office at the United Earth Defense Headquarters when his phone rang. The voice on the other end was shaking with fear. "Commander, look outside. Look at the sky." Taiho walked to his window. His coffee cup fell from his hand and broke on the floor. He did not notice. His eyes were fixed on the sky above the city. Massive ships hung in the air like mountains of metal. They blocked the sun. There were hundreds of them, maybe thousands. They stretched from one end of the sky to the other. Taiho had been a soldier for 15 years. He had seen war. He had seen death. But he had never seen anything like this. The ships were alien. Everyone knew it immediately. This was not some secret military project. These ships came from another world. Within minutes, every television and radio on Earth broadcast the same message. The aliens spoke in a cold, flat voice that had been translated into every human language. "We are the Velen Empire. We have conquered 47 star systems. We have never lost a war. Your planet now belongs to us. You have one day to surrender all your weapons and submit to our rule. If you refuse, we will destroy your cities one by one until nothing remains. Do not test us. Surrender or be erased." The message ended. Silence followed. Taiho watched the news reports. World leaders were panicking. Some countries were already talking about surrender. What choice did they have? These aliens had technology that humans could not even understand. Their ships were the size of cities. Their weapons could probably destroy entire nations in seconds. But Taiho did not feel fear. He felt something else. Something hot and angry in his chest. He called an emergency meeting with his officers. Lieutenant Park Yuna was the first to arrive. She was his second in command, a smart woman who always thought before she acted. She looked at Taiho's face and frowned. "You have that look," she said. "The look that means you are about to do something crazy." "Not crazy," Taiho replied. "Just necessary." The room filled with officers. They all looked scared. They all looked defeated. Taiho understood their fear, but he could not accept defeat. "Not yet. Not ever. I have studied their fleet," Taiho said, pointing to the holographic display that showed the alien ships. "Look here. And here. Do you see it?" The officers looked confused. Captain Lee Minji, head of intelligence, leaned forward and studied the display carefully. Her eyes went wide. "The formation," she whispered. "There are gaps." "Yes," Taiho said. "Small gaps, but gaps. Their ships are not perfectly positioned. Do you know why? Because they have never needed to be careful. They have conquered 47 star systems. No one has ever fought back hard enough to make them worry about defense." Yuna shook her head. "Commander, even with gaps in their formation, we cannot win. Our weapons are nothing compared to theirs." "I do not want to win," Taiho said. "Not today. Today, I want to hurt them. I want to show them that Earth will not kneel. I want to make them bleed." The room was silent. Every officer stared at him. "Some of you think I am insane," Taiho continued. "Maybe I am. But I would rather die fighting than live as a slave. And I believe many humans feel the same way." He pressed a button and a battle plan appeared on the display. "I call it Operation Fireback. We will use everything we have. Fighter jets, missiles, nuclear drones. We will hit them in their weak spots. We will be fast and we will be brutal. Many of us will die. But we will make them remember this day forever." The officers looked at each other. Fear was still in their eyes. But something else was growing there too. Something like hope. Something like anger. Major Choi Sunwoo, the demolitions expert, stood up. I am with you, Commander. I would rather die on my feet than live on my knees. One by one, the other officers stood. Yuna was the last. She sighed and shook her head, but she was smiling. You are definitely insane, she said. But I will follow you anyway. Within 6 hours, Taiho had assembled 200 volunteers, pilots, soldiers, engineers, even some civilians who refused to hide. They all knew the odds. They all knew they would probably die. They did not care. As the sun set, the counterattack began. Human jets screamed through the sky, moving faster than the aliens expected. Nuclear drones slipped through the gaps in the formation and exploded against alien hulls. The night sky lit up with fire and explosions. The aliens were shocked. They had expected surrender. They had expected fear. They did not expect missiles slamming into their ships. They did not expect humans flying directly into their fleet. With no regard for their own lives, 11 alien ships fell that night. They crashed to Earth in balls of flame. Thousands of aliens died. It was not a victory. It was barely a scratch against the massive fleet. But it was something no species had ever done before. The Valan Empire retreated. For the first time in their long history, an invasion fleet pulled back from a planet they had come to conquer. Commander Kan Taiho stood on a rooftop and watched the alien ships rise higher into the sky. He was wounded. He was exhausted. But he was smiling. They will come back, Yuna said, standing beside him. With more ships. More weapons. More anger. I know, Taiho replied. But now they know something too. They know that Earth bites back. And that changes everything. The war for Earth had just begun. The news traveled faster than light itself, across the galaxy, on hundreds of different worlds. Beings of all shapes and sizes watched the footage with disbelief. A small blue planet. Primitive ships made of metal and fire. Explosions lighting up the darkness of space. And 11 Valan warships falling from the sky like dying stars. The Valan Empire had controlled most of the galaxy for thousands of years. They had crushed countless species. They had destroyed entire civilizations. No one had ever made them retreat. No one had ever made them bleed. Until now. On the planet Oris, a species called the Mali lived under Valan rule. They had been slaves for 300 years. Their cities were controlled by Valan soldiers. Their children were taught to obey. Their spirits had been broken long ago. But tonight, an old Maldi named Corinne watched the footage on a hidden screen. Tears rolled down his wrinkled face. His hands were shaking. They fight, he whispered to himself. These humans, they actually fight. He watched a human pilot fly his small jet directly into an alien ship. The explosion killed the pilot instantly, but it also destroyed a weapon system that had been firing on a human city. The pilot had given his life to save strangers. Corinne had not felt hope in decades. He had forgotten what it felt like. But now, watching these strange two-legged creatures from a distant world, he felt something warm spreading through his chest. If these humans could fight, maybe the Maldi could fight too. Back on Earth. Commander Kang Taiho knew that the first victory meant nothing if they could not survive what came next. The Valan would return. They would return with more ships, more soldiers, and more anger. Earth needed to be ready. He promoted Captain Lee Minji to lead the intelligence division. Minji was different from Taiho. Where he was loud and fierce, she was quiet and careful. Where he trusted his instincts, she trusted facts and data. They were opposites, but they worked well together. Find out everything about the Valan, Taiho ordered her. Their history, their culture, their weaknesses, everything. Minji nodded. She gathered a team of scientists, linguists, and analysts. They worked day and night, studying the wreckage of the destroyed alien ships. They examined alien bodies. They decoded alien communications. Within 2 weeks, Minji had answers. She called a meeting with Taiho and the other commanders. Her face was calm, but her eyes were bright with excitement. "I know why they are so confident," she said. "And I know why they will lose." Everyone leaned forward to listen. "The Velen Empire is old," Minji explained. "Very old. They developed advanced technology thousands of years ago. They conquered their first star system before humans even learned to make fire. But here is the important thing. They have not changed since then." "What do you mean?" Taiho asked. "Their tactics are the same ones they used 3,000 years ago. Their ships are bigger and stronger, but they fight the same way. They arrive with overwhelming force, demand surrender, and crush anyone who refuses. It has always worked. So they never learn to adapt." Major Choi Sunwoo scratched his head. "So they are strong but stupid?" "Not stupid," Minji said. "Just lazy. They have never needed to be clever. They have never faced an enemy that surprised them. They expect every battle to be easy." Taiho was starting to smile. "And we surprised them?" "Exactly. They do not know how to handle a species that fights dirty. A species that does not follow the rules. A species that would rather die than surrender." Lieutenant Yoon Hana, who led one of the surviving pilot squadrons, spoke up. "So we can beat them?" "I did not say that," Minji replied carefully. "They still have more ships, more weapons, and more soldiers than we can imagine. But they are not unbeatable. They are conquerors, not warriors. There's a difference." Taiho stood up and walked to the window. Outside, workers were rebuilding destroyed buildings. Soldiers were training with captured alien weapons. Scientists were studying alien technology. Everyone was working. Everyone was preparing. "A conqueror takes what he wants because no one can stop him," Taiho said slowly. "A warrior fights because he believes in something worth dying for. The Velen fight because they are used to winning. We fight because we have no other choice." He turned to face his officers. "That is our advantage. We have nothing to lose. Every human on this planet knows that if we surrender, we become slaves forever. If we fight, we might die, but at least we die free. That kind of determination is something the Velen have never faced before." Yuna raised an eyebrow. "So your strategy is to be more stubborn than them?" "My strategy is to be more dangerous than them," Taiho replied. "Stubborn people refuse to give up. Dangerous people make you afraid to continue. We need to be both." Over the next few months, Earth transformed. Factories that once made cars now made weapons. Schools taught survival skills. Children learned to hide from alien sensors. Old people learned to shoot. Taiho threw away the old military rulebooks. Traditional armies did not work against an enemy with superior technology. He needed something new, something unpredictable, something that would make the Velen afraid to set foot on Earth. He studied human history. He read about guerrilla wars. He learned how small groups of determined fighters had defeated massive empires throughout the centuries. He combined old tactics with new technology. And he waited. Far away in space, the Velen Empire was preparing its revenge. Supreme Commander Reth, who had led the first invasion, was furious. He had conquered dozens of worlds. He had never tasted defeat. These humans had humiliated him in front of the entire galaxy. He gathered a fleet 3 times larger than before. Thousands of warships, millions of soldiers, weapons that could crack a planet in half. "This time," Reth declared, "we will not offer surrender. This time, we will teach the galaxy what happens to species that dare to resist the Velen Empire." His fleet launched toward Earth. And across the galaxy. On dozens of conquered worlds, Billions of enslaved beings watched the footage of burning Velen ships one more time. They whispered to each other in the darkness. They remembered what hope felt like. The humans were coming, and everything was about to change. The Velen fleet arrived on a cold winter morning. This time, there were no warnings, no demands for surrender. Supreme Commander Reth had decided that humans did not deserve the chance to submit. They would simply be crushed, the sky filled with alien ships. There were so many that they blocked out the sun completely. Day became night. The temperature dropped as shadows covered entire continents. Commander Kan Taiho watched from his underground bunker. The display screens showed thousands of enemy vessels. His officers were pale with fear. Even Yuna, who never showed emotion, had terror in her eyes. "There are too many," she whispered. "We cannot fight this." "We cannot fight them in space," Taiho agreed. "So we will not try. We will let them come down here, and then we will show them what hell looks like." The Velen expected the humans to fight in space. They expected missiles and nuclear weapons. They expected desperate attacks on their fleet. Instead, they found silence. No resistance. No counterattack. Nothing. Reth was suspicious at first. This was too easy. But his scouts reported that the human military had scattered. Their bases were abandoned. Their ships were hidden. It seemed like humanity had given up. "They finally understand," Reth said with satisfaction. "They cannot win. Now we will land our forces and begin the occupation." Millions of Velen soldiers descended to Earth. They expected to find a broken species waiting to be enslaved. They expected fear and submission. They found traps instead. The first Velen transport ship landed in what appeared to be an empty field. The soldiers marched out in perfect formation, just as they had done on dozens of other worlds. They scanned for threats. They found none. Then the ground exploded beneath their feet. Major Choi Sunwoo had spent months preparing this moment. He had buried explosives across every landing zone. He had designed pressure-sensitive triggers that only activated when alien feet touched them. The first wave of Velen soldiers died before they even knew they were under attack, but that was only the beginning. Taiho had turned every city into a death trap. Buildings that looked abandoned were filled with armed civilians. Sewers had been converted into ambush tunnels. Subways became underground fortresses. Bridges were rigged to collapse. Streets were mined with hidden explosives. The Velen soldiers marched into cities, expecting easy conquest. They found war-human fighters appeared from nowhere. They attacked in small groups, killed a few soldiers, and then vanished before the Velen could respond. They struck at night when alien sensors worked poorly. They attacked during storms when air support could not fly. They used the environment against their enemies in ways the Velen had never experienced. Lieutenant Yoon Hana led a squadron of pilots who flew missions that were almost certain death. Their jets were held together with tape and prayers. Their ammunition was often homemade. Yet they kept flying, night after night, striking at supply lines and communication centers. After one mission, only 3 pilots returned out of 12. Hana was covered in burns from an explosion that had nearly killed her. Taiho visited her in the medical tent. "You should rest," he said. "You have done enough." Hana shook her head. "I will rest when we win, or when I am dead. There is no in-between." This attitude confused the Velen completely. In their experience, conquered species broke quickly. They surrendered when they realized they could not win. They valued their lives more than their freedom. Humans were different. A Velen commander captured a human soldier and demanded information about troop positions. The soldier spat in his face and laughed. "Kill me," the soldier said. "There are millions more like me. You will never take this planet. Not in 100 years. Not in 1,000. The commander was disturbed. He had never seen such defiance in a defeated enemy. He killed the soldier, but the image of that laughing face haunted his dreams. Reth received reports from across the planet. His armies were being destroyed piece by piece. Not in great battles, but in thousands of small ambushes. His soldiers were afraid to sleep. They were afraid to eat. They were afraid to walk down any street or enter any building. In 1 month of ground combat, the Valen lost 40,000 soldiers. On most conquered worlds, they lost fewer than 100. What are these creatures? Reth demanded. He was watching footage of a human woman running toward a Velen tank with explosives strapped to her body. She was smiling as she died. Why do they not surrender? Why do they not fear death? One of his advisors, an old Velen who had studied many conquered species, answered carefully. They have a concept we do not fully understand, the advisor said. They call it spite. It means they would rather suffer and die than let their enemy succeed. They find joy in making us miserable, even if it costs them everything. Reth stared at the advisor. That is insane. Yes, but it is also effective. Our soldiers are losing morale. They expected easy victory. Instead, they are being hunted like prey. Some are refusing to leave their ships. Reth slammed his fist on the table. We have conquered 47 star systems. We will not be defeated by these primitive animals. But deep in his heart, doubt was growing. For the first time in his long career, Reth wondered if he had made a terrible mistake by coming to this strange, angry little planet. On the ground, Taiho received reports of Velen units retreating. Some had abandoned their positions entirely. Others were begging to return to their ships. It is working, Minji said, studying the data. Their morale is collapsing. They have never experienced anything like this. Taiho nodded, but his face was grim. We are hurting them, but we are not winning. They still have more soldiers, more ships, more everything. We can make them bleed, but we cannot make them leave. Then, what do? Taiho looked at the star map on his wall. He looked at all the other planets marked as Velen territory. Planets full of enslaved species who had once been free. We cannot win this war alone, he said slowly. But maybe we do not have to. An idea was forming in his mind. A crazy, impossible idea. But Taiho had learned that crazy and impossible were the only options humanity had left. While Earth burned and bled, something remarkable was happening across the galaxy. On the planet Oris, the old Maldi named Corinne gathered his people in secret. They met in underground caves, far from Velen sensors and patrols. For the first time in 3 centuries, they talked about freedom. The humans are still fighting, Corinne said. His voice was stronger now than it had been in years. They have lost millions of their people. Their cities are in ruins. But they refuse to surrender. They refuse to kneel. A young Maldi named Sira spoke up. What good does that do us? They are far away. They cannot help us. They have already helped us, Corinne replied. They have shown us something we forgot. They have shown us that the Velen can be hurt. They have shown us that resistance is possible. The Maldi murmured among themselves. For so long, they had believed that fighting the Velen was pointless. The Empire was too strong. Rebellion meant death. It was better to survive as slaves than die as heroes. But now? Now they were not so sure. Similar conversations were happening on dozens of other worlds. The Fenari, a species of tall, thin beings with 4 arms, began sabotaging Velen mining operations. The Keth, who lived in vast underwater cities, started hiring fugitives from Velen hunters. Small acts of defiance spread like fire through dry grass. The Velen noticed. They sent reports to Supreme Commander Reth, warning him that their conquered worlds were becoming restless. Reth ignored them. He was too focused on Earth. He did not see the danger growing behind him. On Earth, Lieutenant Minji intercepted a strange transmission. It was coming from outside the solar system. It was encrypted, but poorly. Within hours, her team had decoded it. The message was simple. We are watching. We believe in you. Tell us how to fight. Minji brought the message to Taiho. He read it 3 times, unable to believe what he was seeing. This is from the Maldi, Minji explained. A species on a planet called Oris. They have been slaves of the Velen for 300 years. But now they want to resist. Taiho sat down heavily in his chair. For weeks, he had been fighting a desperate war with no hope of true victory. He had accepted that humanity would probably be destroyed. He had made peace with death. But this message changed everything. They are asking us for help, he said slowly. Us, the humans. The species that cannot even leave its own solar system. They think we have something to teach them. We do, Minji said. We have something the Velen have crushed out of every species they conquered. We have the willingness to fight, even when winning is impossible. We have spite. Taiho laughed. It was the first time he had laughed in months. So our great contribution to the galaxy is teaching aliens how to be stubborn. Is there anything more human than that? Taiho composed a reply. He spent hours choosing each word carefully. This message would travel across the stars to beings he had never met. It might be the most important thing he ever wrote. The message said, "To all who receive this, we are humans from the planet Earth. We are small. We are weak. We have no great technology or powerful weapons. But we are still fighting. We are still alive. And we want to share what we have learned. You do not need to defeat the Velen in battle. You do not need to win wars. You only need to make them suffer. Make every day of occupation cost them blood. Make every mine and every factory a place of danger. Sabotage their ships. Poison their food. Burn their supplies. Never give them a moment of peace. This is how the weak defeat the strong. Not with one great victory, but with 1,000 small wounds that never stop bleeding. Make them tired. Make them afraid. Make them wonder if conquering you is worth the price. They have ruled the galaxy because no one has ever made them work for it. Let us change that together." Minji broadcast a message on every frequency they could reach. They had no way of knowing who would receive it or how they would respond. The response came faster than anyone expected. Within weeks, reports began flooding in from across Velen space. A fuel depot exploded on one planet. A military base was sabotaged on another. Velen ships began disappearing in sectors that had been peaceful for centuries. The Malvi rose up first. Karan led his people in a coordinated attack on the Velen garrison on Oris. They lost thousands, but they destroyed the garrison completely. For the first time in 300 years, the Malvi flag flew over their own cities. The Fenari followed. Then the Keth. Then species whose names humans had never heard. One by one, worlds that had been silent for generations began to scream. Reth finally understood the danger. He pulled ships away from Earth to deal with the rebellions. But there were too many. Every time he crushed one uprising, 3 more began. The empire that had seemed invincible was suddenly fighting for its survival. On Earth, Taiho watched the reports with amazement. The galaxy was catching fire, and humans had lit the match. "We did not just fight for ourselves," Yuna said, standing beside him. "We fought for everyone who had given up. We reminded them what hope looks like." "Hope is dangerous," Taiho replied. "Once people start believing things can change, they become very hard to control." Minji received a personal message from Koran on Oris. It was brief, but powerful. "Thank you. We had forgotten how to dream. You taught us again. Whatever happens now, we die free." Taiho read the message and felt tears on his cheeks. He wiped them away quickly, embarrassed. "We are not alone anymore," he said quietly. "We have allies. We have friends across the stars. Whatever the Velen do to us now, they cannot undo this. The galaxy will never be the same." But even as hope spread, danger grew. Reth was desperate now. A desperate enemy was unpredictable. And the Supreme Commander was planning something terrible, something that would end the war once and for all. Supreme Commander Reth stood on the bridge of his flagship and made the hardest decision of his life. The rebellions were spreading too fast. His fleet was stretched thin across dozens of star systems. His soldiers were dying by the thousands. The empire that had ruled the galaxy for millennia was crumbling before his eyes. And it was all because of one small planet. One stubborn species that refused to die. "If we destroy Earth," Reth said slowly, "the rebellions will lose their symbol. They will lose their hope. We can rebuild the empire, but only if we cut out the infection at its source." His officers exchanged nervous glances. What Reth was suggesting was extreme, even by Velen standards. "Prepare the Void Lance," Reth ordered. The Void Lance was the most powerful weapon in the Velen arsenal. It was designed to crack planets open like eggs. It had only been used twice in the Empire's history, both times to destroy worlds that had proven too troublesome to conquer. Now it would be used on Earth. The weapon needed 72 hours to charge. 72 hours, and then humanity would be erased from existence. No survivors. No resistance. Just a broken, dead rock floating in space. On Earth, Minji intercepted a desperate message from Mali spies near the Velen fleet. When she read it, her face went white. "Commander," she said, her voice shaking, "you need to see this." Taiho read the message. For a long moment, he said nothing. His face showed no emotion, but his hands were trembling. "The Void Lance," he said finally. "They are going to destroy the entire planet." Yuna stepped forward. "We have to evacuate. Get as many people off the surface as possible. There is no time. And we have no ships. Where would we even go?" The officers fell silent. After everything they had survived, after all the battles and sacrifices, it would end like this. Not in glorious defeat, but in total annihilation. Then a young voice spoke up. "We do not need to destroy the weapon. We need to destroy the ship that controls it." Everyone turned to look at Commander Beijio. He was only 25 years old, the youngest commander in the fleet. He had survived 11 missions that should have killed him. Some soldiers called him lucky. Others called him crazy. "The Void Lance is powered by the flagship's main reactor," Jiho continued. "If we can board the flagship and plant explosives on the reactor, we can destroy both the weapon and the command ship. Without Reth, without the flagship, the Velen fleet will fall into chaos." Taiho studied the young man's face. "That is a suicide mission. Even if we could reach the flagship, the chances of survival are almost zero." Jiho smiled. It was a strange smile, calm and peaceful. "Every mission has been a suicide mission, sir. We are still here." The room was silent. Then, one by one, hands began to rise. Volunteers, officers, and soldiers who were willing to die for the smallest chance of victory. Taiho felt something twist in his chest. Pride, love, grief. For all the lives that would be lost. "I will lead the mission myself," he said. Yuna grabbed his arm. "No, you are too important. We need you here. A commander who will not die with his soldiers does not deserve to lead them," Taiho replied. "I will not send people to their deaths and stay safe behind walls. If this is the end, I will face it standing up." They had 40 captured Velen shuttles, small enough to slip past the fleet's defenses. They had nuclear charges salvaged from old missiles. And they had 40 volunteers who knew they would probably never see Earth again. The mission launched at midnight. The shuttles were cramped and cold. The volunteers sat in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Some prayed. Some wrote letters that would probably never be read. Some simply stared at the walls, making peace with death. Jiho sat next to Taiho. Despite everything, he looked calm. "Are you afraid?" Taiho asked. "No," Jiho replied. "I made my peace with dying a long time ago. What I fear is not death. I fear failure. I fear that we will die and nothing will change." "Things have already changed," Taiho said. "Look at the galaxy. Look at all the worlds that are fighting because of us. Even if we fail tonight, the fire we started will keep burning. That is our legacy. That is our gift to the universe." Jiho nodded slowly. "Then let us make sure our gift is worth remembering." The shuttles approached the flagship. Alarms blared. Velen fighters scrambled to intercept. The battle was brutal, and short-30 shuttles were destroyed before they reached the hull. 10 more were torn apart, trying to find entry points. Only 3 shuttles made it inside the flagship, carrying Taiho, Jiho, and 11 other survivors. They fought through corridors filled with Velen soldiers. They lost people with every step, but they kept moving forward, driven by something stronger than fear. Finally, they reached the reactor chamber. Only Taiho and Jiho were still standing. Taiho planted the charges while Jiho covered him. Through the observation window, they could see the void lance, fully charged and ready to fire. In minutes, it would destroy their world. Then the door burst open, and Reth himself entered the chamber, flanked by guards. For a moment, the two commanders stared at each other across the room. Human and Velen, small and towering. Mortal enemies who had never met face to face. "You cannot win," Reth said. His voice was cold, but his eyes showed something Taiho had never expected to see. Fear. "You are right," Taiho replied. "We cannot win, but neither can you." He pressed the detonator. The explosion tore through the flagship. The reactor collapsed. The void lance died before it could fire. Reth and his command staff were vaporized in seconds. Taiho was thrown through the observation window into space. He should have died instantly, but somehow, impossibly, he survived. Mali rescue ships, which had broken through Velen lines in a desperate gamble, found him floating among the debris. He was barely alive, burned and broken, but breathing. Without Reth, without the flagship, the Velen fleet fell into chaos. Ships turned on each other as officers fought for command. The invasion collapsed. Within hours, the remaining Velen forces fled Earth's solar system. On Earth, people emerged from their bunkers and looked at the sky. The alien ships were gone. The long nightmare was ending. News of the flagship's destruction spread across the galaxy. The Velen Empire, already weakened by rebellions, shattered completely. Within a year, the empire that had ruled for millennia simply ceased to exist. In its place, a new alliance formed. The Maldi, the Fenari, the Keth, and humanity. Together, they built a galactic council based on freedom and mutual respect. Tan Taiho, now called Ambassador Taiho, was asked to represent humanity at the first council meeting. When he stood before representatives of 100 different species, they asked him a question that had puzzled them all. What drove your species to fight so hard? You were outmatched in every way. Logic said you should surrender, but you did not. Why? Taiho thought for a long moment. Then he smiled. We are not special, he said. We are not stronger or smarter than anyone else. We are just too angry to die. When someone tells us to kneel, we would rather break than bend. Maybe that is foolish. Maybe that is insane. But it is who we are. The council was silent. Then, slowly, applause began. It grew and grew until the entire chamber was thundering with it. The galaxy had learned an important lesson that day. Some species measure victory by ships and weapons. Humans measure victory by something simpler. They measure it by how hard they made the enemy fight for every inch of ground. They measure it by how many times they got up after being knocked down. They measure it by the look of surprise on their enemy's face when they realize that this species, this stubborn and angry and impossible species, will never, ever give up. Earth had been invaded. Earth had been burned and broken, but Earth had not fallen. And the galaxy would never forget. The end.